For that, leaders of our community have really been outspoken about violence from the protests. Joining me now live is Clark County Commissioner Lawrence Weekly. And Commissioner Weekly, a very trying time. We thank you so much for being with us and taking this time. We do appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Brian, for having me. Thank you.
Commissioner Weekly, let's get right into this. How do we make sure the message of these protests is widely understood and it is not the violence doesn't essentially overwhelm it, that the message gets through?
Well, first of all, we want to remind everyone that what we're seeing is a constitutional right. People have their First Amendment right to express themselves. But more importantly, we want to make sure that it's done peacefully. We want to make sure that it's done safely. I think Sally, your reporter, she hit it on the head. People want to be heard. And right now, hearts are extremely heavy. We are so once again disappointed to see the very disturbing racially motivated hatred and discrimination and violence that have taken place once again on another innocent citizen. And so at this time, as you see the outcry from around the country, people want to be heard, people want accountability, and people want someone to step up and take responsibility for all of this.
Commissioner, I was talking to a friend of mine who was a young man in the early 90s during the LA riots, and we were talking about this issue. How much since that time in history, how much have we improved or not improved? Where are we now, nearly 3 decades later?
You know, I can honestly say we've made some great strides in America. We really have. But we still have some ways to go. Until we understand we're all in this thing together, just like we're fighting this pandemic, Brian. We've all been sheltering in place. We've all been doing our very best to flatten this curve. When it comes to all Americans being free, all Americans having an opportunity to be able to go and recreate, whether we're walking, whether we're jogging, whether we're riding our bikes or in our vehicles, none of us should have to ride around and feel any form of fear. It should be freedom over fear. And so when we start once again listening to one another and start realizing that we're all human, we're all here in a place that's so full of opportunities that we got to work together, and we should not have to live in a place where folks feel like they can treat anybody the way they feel like they can because they feel like they can get away with it and that it's okay. It's very unacceptable, and people are not having it anymore. People are tired.
And that's really they're tired, and that is the message of the protesters. And so many have observed, so many sitting at home watching this, all over the country, the larger group of protesters is peaceful, but this small fringe element is perpetuating the looting and the burning and the violence. So really it is those peaceful protesters that are trying to get the message through. How can they separate themselves from that fringe element that is really perpetuating the violence?
It's really hard, and as the sheriff and his advisory committee have said, Brian, it's so important that those of us that live here, because when it's all said and done, we have to live here. You know, even in my own parts of my district in downtown, some of the buildings have been graffitied and damaged, and we are going to have to go back and repair that. But we want to send the message out to those who are coming here from other places, very unacceptable, and we're not going to have it. I just think that burning someone's building down and tearing and destroying up someone's property, very, very, very unacceptable. And so we all have to be on the same page and sending that message out to folks who are not from our great city here.
Commissioner Weekly, for someone who does not really understand it, please let them know, someone who maybe didn't grow up in a multicultural environment, what is the black experience like in terms of interactions with police, and what can people, for example, white people, what can they understand about it to be more empathetic?
Well, the main thing is to understand that I, too, am America. That's number one. And that we all have an opportunity to be here and to prosper and to flourish in this great country. But to be able to walk around and feel as if there's this superiority thing, it's just not going to work, and it's just not a feel-good thing when you have to ride around and feel like I'm in fear. You know, to be a black man, Brian, and to have to fight 2 pandemics at the same time, man, it's hard. My heart is so full right now. I'm emotional talking about this because it's really unfair. And it's just not right. And so I'm so grateful to see this multicultural showing of people from all around the world who said enough is enough is enough. We're tired.
This is obviously a very trying time, but we look ahead. We look to the future. I always think, hey, better days are ahead. Is there any way from all of what is going on right now that there can be problems solved, that there can be improvement in this pivotal area in the future?
Yeah, man. You know, we've made some great strides here, and I got to say, is our law enforcement here in Southern Nevada perfect? No, it's not. But guess what? I think a lot of people from around the country can look at all the great leadership that's been put into place here. We have one of the most successful law enforcement teams here in Southern Nevada. I just really want to thank the Sheriff Joe Lombardo and his team. You know, we have some things that's on the books that will prevent us from seeing what we saw in Minneapolis with Mr. Floyd. There is, you know, from de-escalation to a number of things that they do. I don't think that they have that in other places. And so, unfortunately, we watched a crime happen right before our very eyes. And it's our hope and it's our prayer that we never experience that, not only here in Clark County, but nowhere else in America. And so let's keep listening to each other, Brian. Thank you all, 8 News Now, for being an ear and an eye out there for us and giving us an opportunity to be heard. We gratefully appreciate you. Thank you.
We're going to wrap up here, but I got to tell you, I'm glad you brought up Metro Police. Sheriff Lombardo talking about how he was disgusted by what he saw in Minnesota, and so many wonderful police out there, so many wonderful protesters, and again, it is really a fringe element that is perpetuating so many of the problems. Commissioner Weekly, we thank you for your words of wisdom. I hope you can hear me because we really appreciated your time. We're going to be back on 8 News Now in a couple minutes. Stay with us.